This podcast is offered by Zen Buddhism Ireland. To find out more or to support Zen Buddhism Ireland, see www.zenbuddhism.ie. Thank you.
I'd like to start by thanking Chris and the pastoral care team here at Maynooth University for inviting me to come and speak about Zen Buddhism today and about the Buddhist tradition. And it's a great honour to be part of this week, looking at different faith traditions. I see the posters on the wall there, looking at the atheistic tradition, which is a very interesting one, the Islamic tradition, the Judaic tradition, and the Christian tradition, etc., and the Vedic tradition from India. And it looks like it was an interesting week. So it's very kind of you to invite me to partake in this. So thank you. I'm here today to talk a little bit about the Buddhist tradition and the Zen Buddhist tradition in particular. Does anyone have a Buddhist practice here? Kind of, yeah.
Not really sure.
Yeah, not really. Do you practice meditation?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Mindful meditation every Monday and Wednesday.
Yeah.
Oh, very good. Yeah. So let me ask the question in a new way. Who has a mindfulness practice? Yeah. Okay. Quite a few. Okay. And of course, a mindfulness practice is a wonderful foundation to understand some things about Buddhism, but it's actually quite different to Buddhism. It's mindfulness in a way stands alone now, doesn't it? In many ways as a practice. Getting very trendy, yeah. And it's come out of Buddhism. Right mindfulness is one part of the eightfold path in the Buddhist tradition. So mindfulness, of course, is not Buddhism, because Buddhism has an entire philosophical, ethical understanding that would underpin a mindfulness practice, and that mindfulness practice would be part of a wider spiritual path, rather than, mindfulness could really be part of a Christian spiritual practice, or a Jewish or Islamic or atheistic practice. But I'm here today to talk about Buddhism rather than mindfulness, and they're not one and the same. So, because I'm getting so old, and my mind is getting so cloudy, I have some notes which are useful. I want to touch on a few things today over the next half hour or so. I want to talk about the wider Buddhist tradition that Zen comes out of. I want to look at the philosophical underpinnings of the Zen Buddhist and Buddhist tradition. I want to talk about the ethical and moral dimension of the Buddhist faith and tradition. And I might mention things about liturgy and Zen ritual and practice as well. So these are some of the things I want to touch upon. And so in a way, I'm sketching out a very broad landscape here today, which I think is probably the best thing to do with the time we have. In case you're not familiar with some of the basic ideas of the Buddhist understanding. So I'd like to start with the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, who is a historical figure who was born somewhere in near the Nepalese border, northeastern India, about 2,500 years ago, maybe more. Recent archaeological evidence shows, in fact, it might be a few centuries earlier. And Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, was born into a comfortable family. he was a prince. So he's very, I suppose Shakyamuni was very much like we are, like Western people, with the privilege that we enjoy, living in a relatively peaceful, comfortable society. So Shakyamuni was sheltered. His father wanted him to take over the Shakya clan as a kind of a political leader, and so he was sheltered very much and given every pleasure and privilege that one could have. But when he wandered first out of the palace, Prince Siddhartha, as he was called then, he encountered old age, sickness, and death. He saw a funeral, he saw an old person, he saw a sick person. And he said, what is all this about, What's this reality about? And what is this suffering that's involved in human life? And how do we escape this? How do we, find a cure to this suffering? So Siddhartha vowed to leave the palace and go off and follow a spiritual path, which he did. And he practiced all the difficult yogic practices of his day, which involved yoga, exercise, fasting to the point of near death. And he practiced with various teachers, and he found none that he thought taught the truth, the true Dharma, the true law. So, near death, he fasted so much he was very close to dying, and a woman came and offered him rice milk, and he ate that, and it restored his strength, saved his life. And he realized then that this extreme way of practice didn't make any sense. And this extreme way of practice comes out of a tradition where the understanding, which I think is quite rife in Western philosophical understandings as well, this understanding that the spirit is one thing and the body, the material body, is something else. And that they're in some sense in opposition to each other. And that the weakening of the body strengthens the spirit. By weakening the body, we strengthen the spirit. We see that in the Christian tradition as well, don't we? In terms of saints going to great lengths to, fast or whatever, okay? And Shakyamuni thought, this is misguided. This is not the right way to practice. That we need a middle way where we respect the physical reality and the spirit, which are not seen in the Buddhist tradition as two different things. They are seen as a totality. They're seen as a total seamless reality. So the body and spirit are one. So Shakyamuni, aided and saved by the woman who offered him rice milk, vowed to sit under a Bodhi tree until he became enlightened, until he became awake to the reality of the way things are. So he sat under the Bodhi tree, and according to the tradition, he encountered temptation from Mara, which is the kind of malevolent presence in the Vedic culture to which he belonged, kind of Hindu culture as it grew into. Think of Christ's temptation in the desert, yeah? Very similar kind of idea. And ultimately he had his great awakening. At dawn, when he saw the morning star, and he realized that he saw into the true nature of reality. He saw what reality actually is, what the self is. He saw all his past lives. And he saw that he was originally enlightened, and so was every other being. And this was the great good news of Shakyamuni, of Buddha. And he becomes Buddha at this point. He becomes the enlightened teacher. And at first he's not sure, will people understand his teachings? And should he just practice on his own, or should he share those teachings? So he goes out and starts to teach for the first time. And what does he teach? He teaches the Four Noble Truths. He teaches He teaches dukkha, the truth of suffering, is the first noble truth. So what is this suffering? This suffering is the fact that you die, that you get sick, that people you love leave you, that you don't get what you want, that reality is not the way you want it, that the people you despise prosper and the people you love leave this world, that little children get leukemia, that tsunamis sweep away thousands of people. And so the truth of suffering, of dukkha, and even at the highest point of our joy, the fact that our great joys will pass is part of dukkha. Now, dukkha is translated as suffering, or unsatisfactoriness, if you wish. So life is unsatisfactory. We have these wants and we have these needs, and we're always chasing that next job, that next relationship, that wealth. Maybe if I lived in Spain, maybe if I went back to Barcelona, I'd be happier. No? Or maybe maybe if I became a Buddhist, I'd be happier. Maybe if I became a Christian, I'd be happier. Maybe if I entered the monastery in what's that wonderful monastery down in
The Chimbera?
Jogshanbera, yeah. Or if I entered Jogshanbera, I'd be happier. Or if I what's that that Christian monastery? Abbey. Glen something Abbey. What's it called? Glenstal Abbey. Maybe if I went into Glenstal Abbey, that would deal with it. You know. Maybe if I got really high on marijuana, that would deal with it. You know. Okay, so this is dukkha. This is the unsatisfactoriness of existence. The first noble truth. The second noble truth is the causes of dukkha. The causes of dukkha are attachment, that we want reality to be a certain way, which is natural and which is human. But to overly attach to that is the source of our misery. To have a lack of equanimity and peace with the fact that things are not always the way we want them to be. That we have attachments and aversions. And that we construct our identity of self around that. So, I'm somebody who likes, football, or I'm somebody who likes intellectual pursuits like philosophy or reading, so when you walk into the room like this, your construction of self made you think certain things or notice certain things. If you're interested in artistic representations, you might have looked at this. If you're interested in the plumbing, you would have went, that's a very good radiator. You know? So our karma, our constructed selves are what we bring. We construct ourselves through these aversions and attractions. Right? This is the second noble truth. And we create the illusion of selfhood in this way. And by clinging to certain things and rejecting other things, we create that suffering. So this is the cause of suffering. And involved in this cause of suffering are the traditional three poisons of Buddhism. Buddhism loves lists, by the way. Okay? Loves lists. And numbered lists in particular. And this is greed, anger, and delusion. Our own greed, we want. Okay? Our anger and our delusion that we do not understand the way reality actually is. The second noble truth. The third noble truth is that there is a way to end this. There's a cessation. of suffering. Okay? Liberation is possible. Nirvana, spiritual joy, freedom from fear, liberation, is possible. This is the third noble truth. So the first noble truth is descriptive. Life has dukkha, has unsatisfactoriness. The second is usually what we do, like, I'm depressed, I think I'll go to the pub. Or I'll get Game of Thrones box set and I'll watch it all this weekend. Or, I'll find some way to distract myself, which is fine, which is very human. But we can go all the way down that path, as far as even addiction, The third is going in the other direction. This is going towards liberation and freedom from fear and suffering and encountering the true joy of our existence. So this is the third noble truth. And the fourth noble truth is that there is this middle way, there is this path which the Buddha offers as the way towards liberation. And this is called the eightfold path. Now, when we have our meals in the Zen monastery, we chant, one of the chants is, Buddha was born in Kapilavastu, enlightened in Magadha, taught in Varanasi, and entered Nirvana in Kushinagara. This is the Buddha's life in one verse. So, his eightfold path. The eightfold path essentially has three parts. Okay. Do you ever see that symbol of, maybe you have one in this room, of Buddhism, which is a wheel with 8 spokes?
It's not the wheel of life.
Where is it?
It's not the wheel of life.
It's the wheel of Dharma, yes. Yeah, there it is, yeah.
Right.
There it is. You see the 8 spokes? That's the eightfold path. Okay? And this is the wheel of Dharma. And one of those spokes is right mindfulness. Okay? And in a way, mindfulness has been taken out of that context and developed into a whole practice on its own. And we know how precious and helpful that is to so many people. But what is the wider context for mindfulness practice? It is the eightfold path. And the eightfold path consists of prajna, which is wisdom, sila, which is ethical conduct, and samadhi, which is meditative absorption. And so the first part of the eightfold path is right view, right? Viewing reality correctly as it is. What are the 3 marks of existence in the Buddhist understanding? One is everything's impermanent. Okay. The second is that there is, as we saw in the first noble truth, there is dukkha, there is suffering or unsatisfactoriness. And the third is that there is no permanent self. Okay? There's no permanent enduring self. So, the Christian idea, or the Judeo-Christian idea of an individual identity for the soul is not part of the Buddhist tradition. Okay? The idea that you have a personal, individual soul that survives death, this is not part of the Buddhist understanding. Okay? Change is one of the marks of existence, impermanence. And to say that the soul survives death and continues as an eternal thing is not part of the Buddhist understanding. The understanding is that there is no birth, actually, originally, and there is no death. There is the constant stream of change. Where's the child that you were in 1985? Where's that gone?
Wasn't even born.
Yeah, sorry. I should revise my thing for millennials. 2000? How's that?
Yeah, you can tell me.
Tell me, what year were you born?
1978.
Okay. Whenever you were born. When you were 4 years old, where's that child gone? And when you were 5? Has the child been annihilated and murdered and killed off? No, it has not. Is it still here? and present, no, it is not. Okay? There is no birth, nor there is no death, there is change. So, and after your death, that continues. You are not annihilated, you continue to change, and karma continues to flow forth. So, the three marks of existence: impermanence, no self. What does no self mean? That you don't exist? No, it doesn't. It means there is no enduring, permanent self. Okay? And the third is dukkha, which I've spoken about already. So to have the correct understanding is the first thing, right view of reality, right intention, the intention to not harm others and to find liberation is part of the eightfold path. Ethical conduct, right speech, the third spoke in the eightfold path. Speaking in a truthful and unharming way. Not trying to injure people with your words, not trying to hurt people and do damage, engage in lying, etc. The fourth part is right action, acting in a unharmful way, in a way that does not harm other sentient beings. This is right action. Right livelihood is that you should earn your living, do something with your life that doesn't harm other beings. So traditionally Buddhists are not, we wouldn't engage in dealing guns or arms, or we wouldn't be butchers or bartenders. There are certain jobs we wouldn't do, naturally. There have been exceptions to that, of course, in the Buddhist tradition. Right effort is, you must make an effort to improve. Anyone who's tried to meditate will see that if they don't stick with it, it won't work. Because meditation is a vow. Okay? Marriage is a vow. What happens in the marriage vow? In the marriage vow, people say, okay, today, in this day in November, I'm with this woman or this man, and whatever happens in the future, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, we're going to try and stick together. Okay? And this is a vow. A vow is made outside time. A vow is made from an atemporal point of view, because we don't know what the future brings. It's the same with meditation. The vow to meditate means, even if I'm not enjoying it, even if I don't feel like meditating, even if I'm getting bored sitting here, why am I doing this? Is totally pointless, right? To keep doing it. This is right effort. Right mindfulness, well, many of you are familiar with mindfulness. Usually understood as being aware of the present moment. Being aware of this reality right now. There is no other reality than this. This is it. This is reality. Here it is. The past is gone. The future has not arisen. This is reality. Here it is. You have arrived. You have arrived at the present moment, every moment. Liberation is possible at every moment. Change is possible at every moment. So this is to do with awareness as well as being aware of the present moment, a broader awareness. And right concentration, the eighth part of the Eightfold Path, correct meditation or concentration, these are the various meditative practices that come out of the foundation of mindfulness. So in many ways, mindfulness is the foundational practice, and there are many other meditation practices. So the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths are kind of Buddhism 101. Okay? So it's Buddhism 101. And the Buddha taught for about 40 years. He lived until he was 80. He died at the age of 80. And after his death, they had the first Buddhist council and the second Buddhist council and the third Buddhist council where his followers came together and they wrote down the teachings, and this became the Tripitaka, the Pali Canon. Massive volume of sutras and discourses by the Buddha, and huge amount of teachings, and this forms the basis of the Theravadan school of Buddhism, the way of the elders. So, do you ever see those Buddhist monks going around in orange robes and yellow robes, and this is the first wave of Buddhism. This is the Buddhism that seeks arhatship, or liberation for the individual monk. You must find your own liberation. And the Pali Canon of the Buddhist teachings really is central to that tradition. Later on, what emerges is the Mahayana. And the Mahayana, to which the Zen school belongs, is called the Great Vehicle. So, in other words, individual salvation is not enough. If there are other beings suffering, how can your salvation be complete? And this is the Bodhisattva path, the path of the awakened being. And the idea here is that as long as other beings are suffering, you must dedicate yourself to relieving their suffering. And your own final Buddhahood, your own final nirvana, cannot be possible while there are others suffering. And this is to help and to deliver all beings into liberation. This is the Bodhisattva path, which is central to the Mahayana. And the Mahayana just means the great vehicle, to carry everyone over. The traditional image in Buddhism is that it's to carry us over to the other shore of liberation, of nirvana. To get from this reality of samsara. Samsara is this reality with all its pain and suffering and difficulty, and nirvana is liberation and joy, and to carry everyone over. So this is the Mahayana. The third big kind of movement in Buddhism is the Vajrayana, to which the Tibetan school belongs. The various Tibetan schools, there's about 4 principal Tibetan schools of Buddhism. And the Vajrayana's understanding is very much the Bodhisattva path as well. It is very similar to the Mahayana. The practices are different. So mantra practice, visualization, etc. So these are the 3 great vehicles of Buddhism: the 4 Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. Where can I locate Zen Buddhism in this? Well, Buddhism moves from India to China, and from China it moves to Japan, and from Japan it moves to Europe and America. That's the path of the teachings. And the Zen school, Zen means meditation. That's what it means. And in India, Zen really starts in India. When it comes to China, it becomes Chan Buddhism. Bodhidharma comes probably the 6th century or something like that. He comes from India to China to bring Buddhism. He's a bit like the St. Patrick figure for Irish Christianity. He brings the teachings. And over many generations, Chan develops with an emphasis on silent illumination practice. Silent illumination practice is the Zen practice. Silent, calm abiding practice, and illumination, vipassana practice, seeing into the reality, into the true nature of reality. Both are included in Zen meditation. So this Chan tradition develops over many centuries, and in a monastic setting. And one of the great teachers, for example, is Hongzhi, born in 1091, and he really develops the meditation style of the Zen school, which in the 13th century, Master Dogen, a Japanese monk, goes to China and brings it back to Japan, and this becomes Zen. Okay, the word Zen is the Japanese mispronunciation of the word Chan. Okay, and Zen has 5 main houses, 5 main schools. 2 of them are still strong: Rinzai Zen and Soto Zen, and I belong to the Soto Zen school. Now, lineage is extremely important in the Zen tradition. So my lineage can be traced back 93 generations. Okay? So this is how we know it's the authentic Buddha Dharma. It's passed on from master to disciple, face-to-face transmission over generations. And this really is part of the Zen understanding that it is an experiential practice rather than a dogma or a scriptural teaching. So Bodhidharma is reputed to have said, what is Zen? What is this practice? It is a special transmission outside the scriptures, no dependence on words and letters, direct pointing to the mind of man, seeing into one's nature and attaining Buddhahood. So Zen is not about thinking about Zen. Zen is about doing Zen. Zen is about meditating more than anything else. Yes, there are rituals and services and sutras and chanting, but the central practice is to sit in still meditation, in silent illumination practice. That and the precepts. The ethical precepts are the other side of Zen. And Zen is not just meditation. Zen without the precepts is not Zen. Okay? Without the ethical tradition, you're not practicing the way. And in a way, just emphasizing meditation or mindfulness can be destructive. It can lead to a personal coldness or a pumping up of the ego, which is corrected through right understanding and the other parts of the Eightfold Path. For example, the Bodhisattva precepts are, well, they sound familiar to you. Things like, I will not kill, I will not take what is not given, I vow not to misuse sexuality, I vow to refrain from false speech, I vow to refrain from intoxicants, I vow not to slander, I vow not to praise self at the expense of others, I vow not to be avaricious, I vow not to harbour ill will, I vow not to disparage the 3 treasures of Buddhism. So, the ethical tradition is as important. How are we doing for time, Chris? 5 minutes. Oh, right. So really at this point, I should kind of wrap up, and in the short time that we have, all I can really do is introduce the basic understandings of Buddhism, which is the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, and to give you a kind of an architecture of the history in terms of the Theravadan tradition, the Mahayana and its Bodhisattva path, and the Vajrayana in terms of its esoteric practices that we see in the Tibetan tradition, and to re-emphasize the moral unity, the ethical unity of the very diverse Buddhist tradition. So, what creates unity is the precepts, is the ethical precepts. The practices vary. A lot of people think the Dalai Lama is the Pope of Buddhism. He's actually the leader of one of the 4 main schools of Tibetan Buddhism. So Buddhism is very diverse as Christianity. And but what is unifying is the moral tradition, the ethical tradition of Buddhism. Does anyone have any questions? I better wrap that up. So that's the Zen. That's kind of like an absolutely insane attempt at kind of squashing it all into about 40 minutes. Yes?
What's the main intention of practicing Zen?
The main intention of practicing Zen is to awaken to the true nature of things.
So is it like a philosophical kind of perspective thinking?
No, it's beyond words, and it's an insight into the true nature of reality beyond words and letters. So, Zen understands that the human mind is a limited mirror to the great, vast richness of the ocean of reality. And the human mind can only subjectively apprehend reality. So we do a lot of philosophy in Zen, but we realize that philosophy will go only so far. And after that is where Zen begins. It's a mystical tradition, if you will, in some sense. There's a great koan teaching story from the Chinese Chan tradition. And the monk comes to his teacher, his master, his Zen master, and says, I feel like I've got to the top of a 100-foot pole. What do I do? And he says, keep climbing. So, when we get to, after a couple of thousand years of Western philosophy, have we cracked it yet? So, when we get to the top of the pole, there's still a ways to go. Yeah.
How would the teaching of Zen Buddhists differ from that of, say, Shaolin monks or other so-called warrior monks?
Yes, the Shaolin tradition is part of the Chinese Zen tradition, the Chan tradition. Bodhidharma, who brought Buddhism to China, did his meditation in Shaolin Monastery. But the martial arts tradition is not part of the Zen tradition; it's separate. Yeah.
Do you know why they practice
martial arts?
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with Zen. It has to do with the history of Buddhism in China in defending itself against. My understanding is, might be wrong, is that the monks had to remember. Buddhism was a foreign religion coming to China from India, and it was met with great hostility, including violent hostility. So in a way, they have to defend themselves in a very violent society.
Is the body of Buddhism not supposed to become very pacifist in nature?
There are yes and no. There are great misunderstandings, simplifications of Buddhism. There are times when it is necessary to act, for example. If someone is beating someone up, it's sometimes necessary to pull them off. So, yes, it's generally pacifist in orientation, however. Yes?
When doing Zen meditation, do you listen to music or chant mantra, or is done in quiet?
It's done in quiet. It is silent illumination. No music, no chanting, no mantra, no visualization of deities. We begin with the breath and the body. And we enter samadhi, we enter quiet concentration. And within this comes illumination.
What's then the difference between meditation and concentration?
Concentration and meditation is focused on a particular focus, whereas Zen meditation is open awareness. So, for example, if I focus on the breath, that's a focus meditation. If I focus on a picture of Buddha or a crucifix, that's a focused meditation. But in the Zen tradition, it is open awareness to whatever emerges in the field of experience. It's not meditation in the way that meditation is normally understood. It is sometimes called the method of no method.
Sorry, I have a question. The Buddhist sacred text, I can never pronounce it, the
Tripitaka, yeah.
Tripitaka, do all four schools subscribe to that as their sacred text?
Yes and no. Like everything in Buddhism, it's very difficult to give a simple answer, because for the first school, the Theravadan school, the Pali Canon is most sacred. But later sutras emerged that form the basis of the Mahayana, For example, the Prajnaparamita Sutras, Diamond Sutra, the Lotus Sutra. These sutras came a couple of centuries after the Buddha. They refined and developed the original understandings. So, yeah.
What would be the typical day of, say, where you were in?
In a Buddhist monastery?
Yeah.
It varies monastery to monastery, but lots of meditation. Getting up maybe at 3:30, 4:30, 5:30, depending. Lots of meditation, zazen. The whole day is structured around zazen, which is what we call meditation, and work. Physical work as well as intellectual work. In India, the monks went with their begging bowls, and that's how they lived. And in China, the Chinese work ethic is very strong. So when Indian Buddhism came to China, they said, we're not giving you guys a free ride. You have to earn your living. A day without work is a day without food. So the Chinese monasteries grew their own food, made their own clothes, etc. They were self-sustaining communities. So to sustain the monastic community is what the day is structured like. So there would be farming, there would be washing, cooking. After the abbot, one of the most honoured positions at a Zen temple is the tenzo, and the tenzo is the cook who feeds the entire monastic community. So meditation, work, services, chanting, end the day with meditation. And during retreats, the meditation is up to maybe 15 hours a day, and that will last for about a week. So every month or so you'll have a intensive meditation. Yeah. So lots of zazen. Yeah. Yeah.
She loves zazen. Do you know how you were saying that you don't believe anything is permanent?
Yeah.
And change is like the ultimate thing.
And we don't. It's not that we believe it; we observe it.
You observe it. Well, does that mean that you don't believe in a higher being? Are you open to that?
We don't. The Buddha doesn't engage in it. So, the Buddha comes out of that specific Indian type Hindu culture where there's Brahman and the gods, and that's in the cultural background of Buddhism. But there are people who practice who are atheistic, and there are people who practice who are theistic. Both.
Doesn't matter.
No, it's not something we engage in, unless you can prove it one way or another. But I think we've been talking about that way for a while.
So you're leaving it open.
Yeah. Buddhism is interested in open questions because we want to see what's really there, what reality really is. We're less interested in saying, well, I think this, and I'm going to bring that to reality. Do you see what I'm saying?
And there's no dogma in Buddhism really, in the sense that there's nothing. It's quite different from a Western religion in the sense that there's nothing that you have to accept. So you don't have to believe in reincarnation, or you don't have to believe in the practice. You'd be told to go away and to experience it for yourself. Isn't that correct?
Yes, I think that's right. It's not a dogmatic religion in that sense. Yeah. There aren't a set of things you have to say, I believe in, to be Buddhist or to practice Buddhism. Buddhism is about practice. To return to that again, it's about doing Zen, not about believing Zen. So, there's a great teacher. Final thing I'll say, I'm sure we have to wrap up soon. There's a great teacher called Tozan in the Japanese tradition, Dongshan in the Chinese tradition, same person. And Dongshan was teaching the Dharma one day, and someone said, hey, your teacher said the opposite. Your teacher didn't say the same thing as that. And Dongshan said, I would greatly dishonour the memory of my teacher if I agreed with him wholly. So,
I have one quick question.
this is the spirit. This is the spirit of Zen. Yeah.
What are the connections between the Eight Noble Truths, or the Four Noble Truths, and the
Eightfold Path.
The Eightfold Path with the yogic teachings of the 8 limbs of yoga, and because they have practically identical but slightly different philosophical teachings. Did one come before the other? Were they developed parallelly?
Are you talking about the Vedanta teachings?
The sort of the sutras, the Vedic sutras, and Patanjali's
Yeah.
yogic sutras that he speaks about the equivalent of the Noble Truths and the eight-limbed path of yoga, and they're almost identical.
Okay. First of all, I should say I don't know. Okay. That's the first thing I should say. I don't know, and the reason I don't know is because I practice in the Zen tradition, and there's enough there. There's enough eating and drinking in it. You know, there's enough to keep me going there. But people have come to practice with me from yogic traditions, and they tell me, as you do now, that there are parallels. And I do know that out of this common Vedic culture emerges Buddhism, which then feeds in later back into that culture.
Okay, so it's kind of
So that
cyclical.
that it's coming and going. It's giving and taking from the tradition. That yogic tradition is nourished, kind of gives birth to Buddhism and then is nourished again. But it is true that the Zen practice is essentially a yogic practice. And yoga is a preparation to sit meditation. That's what it is. It's not just exercise. Yes.
That's one last question. It's been amazing. It's been enlightening just sitting and listening to you full stop here. And I'm just struck. Yesterday we did talk about Judaism. Personally, I found it so much gripping onto the past and rituals of the past and all that. And today it's completely different because I find what you're saying is so focused on the now. It's fantastic, and also what I identify with is the cyclical nature of our lives and every life on earth, which is terrific. But my question is, in a monastery.
No, I'm enjoying listening to you. Keep going.
Okay,
keep going.
okay, that's what I'm getting right. My question is,
We are too.
Okay. In a monastery,
Yes.
You're all there together. It's a group of people, and invariably there will be frictions between people,
Yeah.
irritations. He wants to do one thing, another. You're working together and all.
Yeah.
How does that work in practice?
Yeah. Well, I did my training in a monastic setting, but of course I live in I've a wife and children now. Japanese Zen, particularly, is not celibate, which I think is a good thing because we see the problems that celibacy leads to potentially, and I'm sure this is the same scandals that have happened in other churches. I'm sure exist in the Tibetan schools, for example. We tend to idealize Asian religions, which is a mistake. I am sure there are scandals waiting to come out of the Tibetan monasteries. So yes, I did my training in a monastic setting, but I don't live in one. So the monastic setting is easier than secular life. It's easier because the whole life is structured to support your practice. The whole life is structured to enable you to sit zazen for many hours every day. But nevertheless, Ango is the period of training, 90 days of intensive meditation, which you have to do a number of angles. And the thing is that we're like stones that rub off each other and polish each other. And our own shortcomings become apparent when we bump up against other people.
Yeah.
And they polish us and we polish them. But that happens in secular life as well. Yes, the monastery, life in general, contact with other people, brings out our shortcomings and polishes us and makes us a bit smooth. So it's important to exist, to practice off the cushion in society. Yeah.
I have another question, sorry. Maybe it's a little silly question.
It's never a silly question.
I always practice meditation every day, and I would like to ask if there are any risks related to meditation. And with these I mean that sometimes I am just in a state of trance.
Yeah.
And if you get interrupted in such a state, are there any risks?
Yes.
No.
What tradition are you practicing in?
I don't know exactly, but it's just sometimes guided meditation,
Yes.
and also I also practice it like kind of hypnosis. I don't know. It's
Okay.
Just, yeah. That's,
Yeah. I don't agree with this at all. Okay, and I'll tell you why. Meditation is about, I think there's great risks based. The reason I don't agree with it is because there's great risks associated with what you're saying. Meditation is not an out-of-body experience of trance or hypnosis. Meditation is a coming home to ourselves and a grounding experience. So people come and they say, you know, I do drugs, that gets me to a meditative position. No, quite the opposite. The same with hypnosis. Hypnosis is hypnosis and meditation is meditation. They're different things. Yeah. It is important, so if you're conflating meditation and trance hypnosis, you should, I believe, separate them out. Yeah. Yeah. As the Buddha said, it's important to dig in one place. Okay, if you're going to dig a garden, you just don't go all over the place. You know, to dig a hole, you don't dig all over the place. You dig. Yeah. Now, I also, what's very important in the tradition is that you practice with a teacher, with an authentic teacher. Because if you don't, then you can go off in the wrong direction very easily. For example, is meditation suitable for everyone? No. If you have psychological difficulties, if you have paranoid if you have some kind of paranoia or schizophrenia or something, you need other professional help. And it might not be a good thing to sit down and meditate. And people have come to me with those kind of afflictions, and I said, don't meditate, seek professional help. And when you've more equilibrium, come back. You know? So, is it dangerous to be in a state of absorption and then to suddenly come out of it?
Yeah, that's perfect. The perfect word.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is not, but be gentle with yourself. Master Dogen says in the Fugan Zazengi, written in 1224, I think it is, that when you finish meditation, you come out of your meditation slowly, with gentleness. You become aware of and you re-enter your life just very slowly, with great self-gentleness, not with abruptness, but very slowly. Now, my advice is don't conflate self-hypnosis or trance-like states with meditation. They are different things, and practice in the context of a genuine tradition with a genuine teacher. Be that Buddhist meditation or not, be that Zen or not.
On behalf of the Pastoral Care Services in Maynooth, we'd like to thank Myozan for his informative and enriching talk, and it was great actually. It's probably one of the most interesting question and answer session that we've had, really, that we can really see that people with their knowledge and their interest of Buddhism, and it's great to actually get that guidance from you. If anybody wants to find out more about your community, would you be able to give us some information on that?
Yeah,
please?
sure. Probably some of you have questions maybe that we didn't have time to address today, or that you just didn't want to ask in public, so I totally understand that. The name of our community is Zen Buddhism Ireland. Binsen there is one of our senior Sangha members, and you'll find us online, zenbuddhism.ie. It's very easy to remember, zenbuddhism.ie. It's our new website, and there you'll find a way to contact me with your question.
Do you have a space of worship or a community
So
centre?
yes, we practice every Monday night in Bagot Street, from 7:30 to 9:30 in Bagot Street, near the Stephen's Green Lewis-Stop.
Harvest Moon Centre.
Harvest Moon Centre. That's it. You'll find the details on zenbuddhism.ie if you want to come and sit with us. You'll also find some training, like I have some YouTube stuff I put up there teaching people how to sit Zen, and there's also a way to contact me for questions. So, thanks for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. For more information or to contact Zen Buddhism Ireland, see www.zenbuddhism.ie.